Welcome to Back to the Futures, the official podcast of the Futures League, presented by ChangeUp. I'm Owen Chadrick. Thanks everybody again for tuning in, watching, or listening. Standings update for you right off the top. We got a lot to talk about here on this intro. The Vermont Lake Monsters in first place. Once again, that doesn't seem to be going away anytime soon. They have been red hot. There is a current three-way tie for second place here. We're recording on Thursday, July the 7th. Westfield, Nashua, and New Britain all on top. Nashua has won 8 in a row to date, so they are definitely back in the race. It's been great to see. As I said, we got plenty of news in the Futures League this week. We'll start with another former member of the Futures League hitting the show. Matthew Batten is heading to the show with the San Diego Padres. We want to congratulate him on making it to the show of Quinnipiac Man. He becomes the 9th ever alum to make it to Major League Baseball. He played for the Torrington Titans back in 2014. So congratulations to Matthew Batten on making it to the show. Another Futures Leaguer in the show. Also this week, well, for the past 2 weeks, we've had 2 incredible games on NESN. We had one in Nashua last week. Shout out to everybody who did a great job there. Randy Brochu on the call. Paul Lambert is back this week. I'm sure it was great on Saturday. We're recording this a little before the second NESN game, but there will be a third NESN game for the first time. NESN will be at Billy Boland's Field. We talked to Seth Dusal last week. He's excited to be on the call for that one. So stay tuned for more NESN content. And probably the biggest news this week in the Futures League comes with our Zorian May-June Team of the Month. We want to congratulate all the guys for making that team. We'll run down the list in a minute. It included Jackson Hornung, the 78 Sports Player of the Month, and Sean Matson, the ChangeUp Pitcher of the Month. Ryan Mara, first baseman for the Vermont Lake Monsters, makes the team along with Robbie Burnett from Pittsfield, Drew Metzdorf, also from Pittsfield, Noah Campanelli from Westfield, Teddy Schoenfield from New Britain, Jackson Klein from Vermont, Joel Lara, we had him on episode 5 of this podcast. He makes the team. TJ Watcher, DH for the Worcester Bravehearts, makes the team as well as Matson, as we mentioned. Jonah Watcher from Nashua, Tim Cianciolo from Pittsfield, who threw a great performance on Wednesday night, throwing 12 strikeouts, breaking the Pittsfield Suns single-game strikeout record. Tanner Smith from Worcester, Michael Quigley from Brockton, and relief pitchers George Goldstein from Vermont and Ian Donahue for Pittsfield. Congratulations to all of those guys making the Zorian Bats May-June Team of the Month. We're only a few weeks away from our All-Star game. That'll be 2 weeks from today on release day of July 11th. So stay tuned for All-Star roster reveals. It's going to be a good couple of weeks in the Futures League. This episode, we have Morgan Brown, the Director of Player Operations for the Vermont Lake Monsters, who, as I said off the top, are in first place. I've got a lot of guys on that Team of the Month I just mentioned, and a guy that recruited most of them there is Mr. Morgan Brown. He talks about this year. He talks about his recruiting process, especially in a short 2021 season when the Lake Monsters were entered into the league. He talks about his time at Harvard, both playing and working, and his humanitarian efforts off the field. It's a great episode. You don't want to miss it. I'm going to get you to this interview. Here is Morgan Brown. We are honored to be joined by our next guest here on Back to the Futures. He serves as the Director of Baseball Operations for the Vermont Lake Monsters. It is Morgan Brown. Morgan, how you doing today?
I'm doing all right, Owen. Nice to be on.
Yeah, we appreciate you coming on the podcast. And we'll start with the state of the Lake Monsters currently as you guys sit in first place in the league. What has it been like to follow the team and watch the team succeed so far this year?
It's always a lot of fun, first of all. And I think, gratifying to see the team come together, in the off season. Coach Wilk and myself and other people in the organization, spend a lot of time putting things on paper. But once people get, in between the lines and on the dirt, it's a whole other ball game. And so that's always great to see. Great to see the energy, great to see the camaraderie and all the great things that come out of summer baseball. Obviously nice to have the success that has happened so far this season. But, at the end of the day, it's about players getting better. It's about, players interacting with the community, fans having a great time. And those bonds that build, but also, player development. We always want to see any player that comes in the organization developing over the course of their summer and going back to their colleges in a better place than when they came to us.
Yeah, 100%. That is definitely the goal of summer ball, and the Futures League and other leagues have done a great job of that. And as I mentioned off the top, you're the director of baseball operations. For the fans who may not know, what does your day-to-day consist of with the Lake Monsters?
Well, I've got to give a lot of credit to other people within the organization that do most of the day to day work. A lot of the work that I do, happens. I've got another job outside of baseball, and a lot of what I do happens in the off season when we're recruiting players, contracting players. I always love to get up to Burlington when I can, and a lot of times I see the team on the road. Um, but there's a lot of those player transactions. Unfortunately, injuries are part of the game, and there's always things that come up during the season, and it's getting new players on board, getting them into town. But crucially, it's I think being a link between a lot of people who do just a huge amount of work, and I would single out people like Frida Tutt, our host family coordinator. When we contract a new player, we've got to try to get people into town. Very quickly, get them into a host family. And there's a lot of things that go into that consideration, whether they have a car, there's just a huge amount of logistics that go in. And there's a huge team with the Lake Monsters that's helps to support that, obviously coordinating with Coach Wilk on things that are happening on the field, injuries that need to be managed, or even, players with a sibling's college graduation or something like that, right? We've got to make sure that we're human beings first and manage that. But we also want to put a competitive, 9 players on the field every night. So, it's a lot of those sorts of things. But I would push a lot of the praise out for the day-to-day operations of the Lake Monsters to, a huge number of people that make that happen on a daily basis.
And you talk about player recruitment, and you said that it's not just you doing that. So how many kind of voices are in your ear when either you're bringing in a new player during the season or when you brought in a player during the off season, whether it's Coach Wilk or, Matt Fincher, whoever else on staff there at the Lake Monsters?
Yeah, again, great team to work with. And ideally, particularly in the off season, we want a lot of voices in our ears, right? We want to hear input from a lot of people. So we've gotten players, certainly, Coach Wilk and I probably do the bulk of it, but we've definitely, Coach Fincher, has a tremendous network, and we've gotten players from Coach Fincher. We have gotten connections just from sort of all over the map. We've, our owner, Chris English, has identified some players. We've had a lot of help from, one of our assistant coaches, Chris Richard, in Vermont. Our statistician, Bruce Bosley, knows Vermont inside and out. So we get leads on players from, all over the map. And it's great. I think if we did a diagram and traced back, where we first heard of everybody, it's always interesting. And then some players reach out directly. Pat Harrington, who became pitcher of the year last year, sent me an email. It's nice when things like that happen. You don't have to go out, looking, and pitcher of the year comes directly to you. So it's, it happens any number of ways. It's probably hardest to make a cookie cutter statement, and say that this is exactly how we always get players. Certainly, if you look at our roster over the last couple of years, there are a couple of programs where we tend to get players on an annual basis because, we've got those relationships pre-existing. But, we just had a call, talking about planning for the 2023 roster. And, one of the goals is always to try to get into new programs, get into new leagues, potentially new parts of the country. I think in New England, certainly the Futures League is very, very well known, but sometimes we talk to people in other parts of the country and it's less well known. And they, we want to make sure that we're attracting players from all over the place and putting together a team that, again, can make a really positive impact in the community, can get along well, and then, hopefully win some games too.
And that definitely leads into my next question, which is, when does player recruitment begin for you? Because I know we'll talk about the championship later, but Colby Brulette said on episode 1 of season 3 way back that he was in pretty much the second after the championship happened. So when does player recruitment begin for you? Obviously, you just said you had a call about it, but when does it gain steam, and when do players start signing onto the roster?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's kind of a glib answer to that, which is it never really ends. You're always looking. There's there's always sort of things in motion, and I think there's player recruitment that happens passively too, right? I mean, when last year winning the championship was great. That got some headlines in different places, and that alerts various teams and potentially various players to what could be a good opportunity for them in the summer. So, that just, doing things well, even funny promotions of the ballpark and the team's social media, those can all act as ways to, recruit players. And, where we get outreach from could come at any time of the season. But as far as putting, pen to paper and sending guys a contract, we usually won't start that, obviously until the end of the current season, but we'll do it, pretty quickly after that. I mean, Colby obviously finished the season with us last year and was a huge part of a championship, just a, outstanding teammate and somebody that we wanted to make sure that we had, going forward. It was kind of a no-brainer. So he was very easy to commit early on, and it was obviously mutual interest. He wanted to come back as well. So there'll be players like that, Jimmy Evans in that category too. He obviously came off of a playoff MVP performance last year. So, those guys were on board very, very quickly afterwards, but we'll start working the phones, right at the end of the season. We know that the recruiting timeline for a lot of the summer leagues just keeps moving up and up. Some of the other summer leagues finish earlier. So we know that some of the other, leagues have already been on the phone with college head coaches by the time we call them. I remember calling a head coach last year on a guy who'd already, received calls on the same guy from teams in the Cape, teams in the ECBL, teams in Northwoods. We were the fourth team to call, and that player was already committed. So, it happens quickly after the end of the season. And I think that's something that surprises a lot of people. But on the other side of the spectrum, when the Lake Monsters came into the Futures League, it was, in the winter, spring of 2021. So player recruitment didn't even start until March 2021 for last year's team. So as much as this cycle we now know that we're on, which is more of a late summer, fall recruitment cycle, we know that last year we did it in the spring and there were a lot of good players available. There's just, college baseball is just tremendously strong. There's a lot of good summer leagues out there too. So there's competition to get those players, but there are a lot of good college players who are looking for good places to play. And, you see it even during the season, right? Players who weren't on a team at the beginning of the season end up being major contributors during the season. So it's not even that by opening day, everybody's signed who could be a good player. There's a lot of good players out there. There's a lot of good programs. And players, summer plans change. Maybe maybe some players really wanted to be at home, but then during the summer they decide that they're okay traveling and living with the host family somewhere, or vice versa. So it's really fluid.
Yeah, and you talk about the fluidity of it all, and last year was a perfect example. You touched on it. You guys came into the league in early spring and had not that much time to get a roster together. And we talked about it all the time last year when you guys were on the road to the championship. You basically had 3 different rosters for the entire summer. So what was that like for you, kind of having to continuously recruit guys after guys had left for whether it was school or whatever else?
Well, working backwards, obviously it was great to end up with a championship, but I will say that it was challenging. I mean, I think on the optimistic side, I'm a product myself of a couple different summer baseball leagues, and had good experiences, but I dealt with major injuries at 2 different points in my own college summer baseball career. So I know these things happen. And it's very unfortunate for those players when they happen. And so I think in an ideal circumstance, you have the, players the whole season and they stay healthy the whole season and they can contribute from day 1 to, day 75. but reality happens. And there's also other things where there might be an opportunity to fit a player in, knowing that it's not a full summer commitment. An example last year, we had a player from Vermont, Sky Rayhill, who had been on the Division III national championship team from Salisbury. Burlington player, high quality player who just been on a national championship team. So that means Salisbury's run in the NCAA tournament went into the Futures League season by a couple of weeks. And then, this is an individual who is, pursuing military service and had ROTC commitments in the summer. And we knew that was going to be the case. We knew it was going to be a short-term time, but we also knew this guy is going to be additive to the Lake Monsters, obviously, hopefully in the box score, but, was going to help us, build a stronger team, build a stronger foundation. Obviously, we always like to get, local players involved. So, that was a no-brainer, even though we knew that was a position that was going to be needed to be filled again in a couple of weeks. It wasn't the long-term solution, So you can make decisions like that are one-off, even if they, the easiest thing to do would be to ride, have the same roster the whole year. You functionally need to do a couple different things, and, you don't want to foreclose the opportunity for a player, even if, they go to a school where they have to report, they have to be in class on August 7th or something, and that's before the season ends, but you don't want to say no to that player because of the academic calendar. And we want to support their academic progress. So we need to make sure that they can leave, but then we have to backfill that position. And so that, those things are all challenging. That's true. But I think on the optimistic side, I hope that everybody that comes through the organization has a really good experience, whether that's for one day or a full season. And gelling as a team can be a challenge, but I think, what you try to do is keep a core group together as much as possible, and then, add players, in and out as they come and go. But huge credit to the coaching staff, who's able to integrate new players and, deal with the challenges and the vicissitudes of the season. Again, huge credit to our host family coordinator, who's able to manage those ins and outs. It's just an impressive group of people that I feel really privileged to work with, to be able to, handle those things. I think a lot of people who've been around baseball for a long time coming out, a lot of the people in the organization, because it was an affiliated organization for 25 years before it became a Futures League organization, are very used to players getting called up, players, moving down, players getting signed, players coming off the DL, players going on the DL. So the transactional elements of the organization, I think in some ways for the Futures League are actually easier to forecast than they are in professional baseball, where, those decisions are getting made at a number of different levels in the organization, and you sometimes don't have full transparency into, how things are happening. Basically for us, the only things that are going to change are, again, the academic, somebody has to leave for an academic reason. Unfortunately, somebody's injured. So we do have changes, but it's probably a more stable roster than, most of the short season A-ball teams were back, a couple of years before we started working on the team.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, of course, looking at all these teams now in the major leagues, calling up big prospects and making moves in the minor leagues. And of course, the Lake Monsters being a single A affiliate, it's definitely a little bit different than that for sure.
Yeah.
And taking a look at your roster, you mentioned it, the amount of local talent. You guys have a lot of guys from Vermont, including Colby Brulette, who we mentioned, Riot Cameron, guys that are from Vermont and from the surrounding areas. How important is that to shaping your roster, trying to get guys from Vermont, from Burlington and the surrounding areas?
It's critical. I think, one, they're very good players, first of all, they're exceptional players that help us win baseball games, first of all. But then when you look at the bigger missions of the organization, connecting with the community, and also helping integrate some of our players that come from different areas of the country. Northern Vermont, Burlington area is a wonderful area. It's great to have not just our host families that, help get players settled in the area. But having a lot of the talented players that we have from local areas can help, integrate some of those players coming from different parts of the country into the environment. I think it's also very cool to have players who grew up cheering for this team, now get to wear the uniform and be on the field for a team that they've spent their lives cheering for. And that is a very, very important part of the Burlington and Northern Vermont area community. So I think that part of it is really exciting. Obviously, these are players that are major contributors for us on and off the field, and it's a core value for us. We're always going to have local talent on the team. I mean, it's a principle of the Futures League that there's New England talent, and I think for us, we double down on that and we try to localize that New England component as much as possible.
Yeah, not only that, did you have local talent, but you had plenty of guys come back from that 2021 team, including Jimmy Evans, the MVP of the championship, George Goldstein, MJ Metz, Brian Schaub is back. He's been back for a couple of games now. What is it like to have those guys back and have their veteran leadership in the locker room kind of steering the course?
Well, I think you just said it. I mean, veteran leadership, on any team is really important. And we're very fortunate to have, a good number of players who wanted to come back and they're great players. They're great people. I think, it helped this year's team gel together pretty quickly. Again, you got guys who sort of know the expectations, but also know, where the, best place to go for breakfast is, like there's things like that I think can just help pull a team together. And so on-field performance, but also the stuff off the field, I think is really important. So having those veteran leaders is great. Again, some of it is thinking about, players that come in and out. I mean, MJ, for instance, obviously Trinity had another good run in the Division III championship. He's going to be doing his next year at Duke. And we knew that, and he knew he was going to have another summer commitment. So we knew we weren't going to have MJ the whole time, but he was our Keenan Award winner last year. So just a, high character person and high quality player. So we knew even if we had him for a month, it would be great for the team.
Hold on, we'll get right back to the Futures. But first, we want to share a message from our friends at 78 Sports. Do you have kids playing baseball or softball? We all know practice time is limited, especially here in New England, not to mention the cost of lessons and cage time can add up very quickly. Save yourself time and money by giving your kids what they need to work on their game at home. Our friends at 78 Sports can help you put together the perfect at-home training setup. Whether you want to start small with just a tee and a net, or looking to set up a full cage with turf and a pitching machine, they have you covered. And I've used their stuff before. I've seen their facilities. They definitely cover everything. The team at 78 Sports design and install hundreds of at-home and commercial sports training facilities, so let them help you find the perfect setup for your space. Visit the 78 Sports website at 78sports.com. That's SEVENTY, the number 8, sports.com. For a limited time only, by just mentioning Back to the Futures, you'll receive a 10% discount off your order. That's SEVENTY, number 8, sports.com. Now, back to your regularly scheduled programming.
Yeah, it's awesome to have those guys back after the 2021 run, which it's finally time to talk about here. It was an unbelievable season for the Lake Monsters. As we said, felt like they had 3 different rosters, but ended up coming together at the end to win the championship. What was that like, being there, being able to host the trophy, and having a championship now under your belt in the Futures League?
It was a wonderful experience, and first off, again, felt best for those players who put it all on the line every night. That coaching staff that really, really worked hard. They're out there every day doing early work with the players. I think players, got better over the course of the season. Felt great for CJ and Dave and everybody in the front office who did just a lot of work on a very short time frame getting Centennial up and running. And then Chris English and the ownership team that saw an opportunity in Burlington to keep baseball in Burlington, to keep baseball at Centennial Field, which I know you've been up there. It's just awesome environment to play in. So, for the players, for the coaches, for the front office, for the ownership, anytime you win a championship is pretty special, and that time might not come around again. I mean, the last time the Burlington franchise had won was in 1996, in the New York Penn League, and that was early in a previous iteration of the franchise, and then it didn't come around again for a while. So you do really have to enjoy those things and reflect back on a lot of people whose hard work went into that. But then, a couple of days later, you start looking forward to the next year. So, you certainly not resting on any laurels. A lot of things had to go right the first year. Again, short time frame to get that team together. Had a lot of people really step up and play some great baseball. Learned some things that we try to put in place this year. And I think we'll continue to try to keep learning things and try to keep improving where we can every year going forward. But a championship is wonderful. I think it's a reflection, again, of those players, coaches, front office, ownership, everybody that worked really hard on that.
And you talk about a major reason for that championship being Coach Pete Wilk and his staff, a guy with plenty of managerial experience leading that group. He's got a little thing for win streaks after the 17-gamer last year, and he had a 13-gamer earlier this year. What do you think he's brought to the club?
Well, I mean, a huge amount. Pete is respected across baseball. Certainly on the player recruitment side, he's got a lot of great connections with coaches around the country, and a lot of credibility. I think coaches know that if they send a player to play for Coach Wilk, for Matt, for Chris, for Hogan, for our coaching staff, those players are going to be well taken care of, and they're going to get better. And so I think that's critical. We've seen, we had a little bit of a rocky start, last year, just on the wins and losses column, but I think players were improving every day through that. So it put us in a position so that when things started clicking, we could run off, a pretty good win streak there, through the end of the season. And so, Pete is just integral to everything that happens with the Lake Monsters, soup to nuts, obviously player recruitment down to, who's going to swing in the home run derby, at the end of the game, or who's going to, obviously lineup changes and all of that. So yeah, I can't say enough about Pete and his role and the veteran experience. He's coached in a lot of quality summer leagues too. He's coached in the Cape, he's coached in Alaska, obviously coached at some top tier programs, in college. So I know you've had him on the show before, but tremendous educator and coach.
Yeah, it's been outstanding to watch him with his players and the way that he's coached that team. It's been incredible to watch for sure. And from on the field to behind the scenes, guys that do an incredible job are Dave Skirmerhorn and CJ Knudsen, who have built this team extremely well. What have you seen from them, and what have they done for the Lake Monsters that the naked eye might not see?
I mean, yeah, I wish people could see everything that those guys do behind the scenes. I mean, just consummate professionals, those two. Extraordinary experience for them both across professional baseball, multiple franchises, and just making sure that, every little thing is taken care of, and troubleshooting the number of things that, that come up that I think a lot of, maybe casual observers wouldn't think about, but those guys are doing it. Also, it rains some night, and those guys are have their rain boots on, and they're out there helping the grounds crew, or bailing water out of a dugout because the drain's clogged, or things like that. So they're I just can't say enough. You have two people like that, backstopping an organization, you're going to do, things are going to do well. And I honestly believe, the efforts of everybody, Dave, CJ, their entire team, translates into success on the field. The players, I think, feel this is an organization that really cares, and a lot of people that are working very hard for their success. And it, again, it impacts the community too. A lot of people want to be involved in that. They want to come out and, have a good night out with the family, which is enabled by the hard work of a lot of people. So just huge amounts of credit to Dave and CJ, and, Pete and again, all those people that do the things day to day that, again, are much more involved in that than I am. But I'm really honored to work with those guys.
Yeah, and as I said, it's been great to watch everything that the Lake Monsters have done. And one thing that they definitely help produce is the massive amounts of promotions at games. And obviously, you said you're more of a, you're more away from the stadium. But when you've gone there, what are some of your favorite promotions that the Lake Monsters put on?
Oh, so I really like the distribution of the water to the umpires in the tiny little scooting van. And I'm probably going to get in trouble for not remembering the sponsor of that little scooter, but I think it's great. I think it's great. I always like the fact that the umpires are smiling when they get their water bottle. I think it's just it's fun. But there's a lot of great ones, and unfortunately, because I'm not there every night when I go up, it always feels like there's something new. Both on the field and off the field. There's new food offerings. There's new there's new seating areas. There's something new. It's a night at the ballpark. It's a ballpark that's been there for a long time. It's a historic ballpark, but constantly being updated and made new again. So it's like a timeless sport and a timeless place with new additions all the time. So the ballpark staff up there does a great job.
Yeah, it's always great to be up in Vermont. Centennial Field is so beautiful. It's so green. That's what I always notice about it, how green it is. And they do a great job with all the promotions up there. So keep it up. Keep it up.
Yeah, it fits, right? Green Mountain State. Certainly when there were the A's, you got the nice green components there. UVM's green. So yeah, it all fits together.
It all works out. Before we return to Back to the Futures, we want to share a message from our friends at Zorian Bat Company. Rob Zorian started the company, Zorian Bat Company, in 2003, literally out of the trunk of his car in Davie, Florida. Within 2 years, he was selling his wood bat line to Major League Baseball and continues to manufacture the highest grade wood bats for Little League all the way up to the majors. Rob Zorian, founder and president of Zorian, says, "I started the company in 2003 to service all baseball players in the United States and beyond. And after 19 years, our mission has not changed. We are very excited to have the opportunity to work with the Futures League and wish all of our players and coaches a healthy and successful season ahead. For more information about Zorian, visit their website, zorianbats.com. Zorian, America's baseball brand." Now, back to the Futures. And transitioning to your role at Harvard, you currently serve as the director of baseball operations there as well. What has it been like to work for your alma mater for the past 13 years?
It's great. I started out obviously as a coach on the field. And then, I've transitioned. I think that, in full candor, the baseball operations, title is pretty different based on what school you're at. So for me, it's volunteer. And, at another school, it'll be a full-time position. They'd be doing much, much more on recruiting and analytics and baseball operations and things like that. I have always done a couple different things. When I started out coaching, I was also working for Oxfam and I was doing humanitarian response. And so I was in Haiti for a good chunk of the year after the earthquake. And then I was in Ethiopia for a good chunk of the next year. And, I couldn't be around the team all that much. But I was fortunate enough to, coach under Coach Joe Walsh and then Bill Decker, who are both tremendous, have been tremendous mentors of mine. I played for Coach Walsh and now I've worked with Coach Decker for the better part of the last decade. And, I was a walk-on in college. So I've never taken it for granted that I could be associated with, that university or that program, even for a day. And I think there were times where, I would have seen success as making the team, and then success was being able to be a contributor, and then I finished out having a decent career and being captain, and then being invited back to coach, and it's all been incredible. I remember being an incredibly shy and probably not certain that this was going to be the right place for me. And so it's been a a pretty incredible journey. But I would say that, the director of baseball operations title, again, in all humility, there is much more generous for me to be associated with that program than it would be for a lot of other teams. I help out a little bit on the margins, but don't, the day-to-day role is not significant with the team. The coaching staff there does a lot of work, and they do what baseball operations directors would do at a lot of other programs. It allows me to stay involved, but I, any success that happens there is due to the hard work of other people.
Yeah. And of course, regardless, it's great that you get to, give back to the school that gave you so much, as you said. And well, let's go to your playing career for a second. You mentioned it. You were the 147th captain in Harvard baseball history, and you just said you were a walk-on. So overall, kind of full circle, what did that recognition mean for you?
That was incredible. I mean, to be captain, to be elected by your teammates, after, when I was a freshman, wondering if I was, even going to be on the team, that meant a lot. But there's also big responsibility. You've got a very significant role that, is the, interface between the coaches in the locker room and all those guys, and a lot of expectations and bringing people together, bringing a team together. So, just a tremendous honor, and something that I'll always, carry with me and appreciate.
Of course. And not only were you the captain, but you did pick up some hardware as well during your playing days at Harvard. You were all Ivy League twice, won the Ivy League and Beanpot championships in 2005. You were the strength and conditioning athlete of the year in 2006, ESPN magazine all-Region team. What was it like to earn all of those accolades and be recognized for the great playing career that you had at Harvard?
It's great. I mean, recognition is wonderful. Like I said at the beginning, I think there were a whole bunch of ways, particularly now in hindsight, where you can see different successes along the way. It's easy to put winning a championship at the end as your ultimate endpoint, but that's only going to happen in some years and in some programs. So you got to have different things that you can consider a success outside of, the recognition that you get from other people. So it's wonderful to be recognized. But I think there were interim metrics of success that are, as important or more important. And a lot of that relates to, the team and the work of the team and how everybody gets along together, particularly if you're a captain, but also, I think everybody on the team is a leader. One person has a C, but everybody, should be working for the team's success. So I think, those team, the team titles really mean a lot. I also know in the years that we didn't win, how hard the team worked. And, unfortunately there's not a trophy at the end every time, but all those experiences were really meaningful.
Yeah, of course. And it led to more baseball for you as you played in the CanAm League. Getting a taste of professional baseball, that had to be sweet. Yeah,
it was unbelievable. I mean, the term that I am borrowing from somebody, and I want to give them proper attribution, but I don't have it right now, is getting paid to eat ice cream. It's something you always wanted to do your whole life. And then somebody's going to pay you for it. I mean, obviously in independent ball is not a whole lot, but somebody's writing, a check and people are buying tickets to see you play. And it was great. And I learned a huge amount about the game, and played with some great guys and some great stadiums and venues. And that was great. And it gave me life opportunities that I didn't think that I would have. And obviously I ended up playing overseas and doing different things. So, baseball, outside of being a fun game and something that I've always had a, close connection to and a passion for, has really given me some tremendous learning opportunities that I think back on all the time. So, I'm really grateful for it. I couldn't believe it when I was given my first check, received a first check for playing baseball. That felt kind of surreal. I think everybody, who plays baseball wants to, be the Red Sox shortstop, wants to be in the major leagues. And I certainly had goals that I would have liked to achieve. But I think there were probably many times through grade school, when somebody asked you what you wanted to be, I probably said a professional baseball player. I might've said a Major League Baseball player a couple of times, and I didn't become a Major League Baseball player, but I did become a professional baseball player. So that, again, that's one of those interim success metrics that even if you don't get all the way there, you got to find some places along the way that are successful. So, I'm proud of that. And, got caught by the injury bug more than once. So, just appreciation for, things to take you on different paths in life. And I think, the injuries that I had turned, baseball into something that I was always very appreciative for, but I knew it wouldn't be the really long-term career. And that's what got me, involved in a lot of the international work that I've found to be very meaningful, as my full-time career. So it's been nice to have the mix.
Yeah, it's definitely good to have that mix there. And I do want to touch on this real quick about playing overseas in Belgium and Australia. How rewarding was that experience? And what's the difference, I guess, between playing baseball here, playing baseball over there?
Yeah, I mean, what a cool experience. I mean, again, getting that's like the getting paid to eat ice cream piece plus getting paid to travel. Like that's a pretty good combo. It was great. I hadn't, until my senior year, I'd only left the country one time, in my life, and then shortly after graduating and getting these opportunities, and then my ultimate onward professional opportunities. I got to see a lot of the world. I really, and it's something that obviously costs some money, and this helps to support that. So I'm tremendously grateful for those organizations that had that confidence in me. They usually are only allowed to have 1 or 2 foreign players on their rosters, and you're expected to coach. Obviously you're expected to carry your weight in the lineup, but there's a lot of those other responsibilities that I think are so important. The community building aspects that baseball can bring, that are really critical. So, it's pretty great. We got to play in some cool settings, but also got to travel and then, meet a lot of people and have friends in a lot of different countries, and still stay in touch with them. So I think it's, the time playing on the field will always be a great memory, but it's nice that you can, carry those friendships forward even when you're not playing there. So I feel very fortunate about those things, and I'm always happy to talk to people about that.
Yeah, that's such a cool experience being able to play, as you said, getting paid to eat ice cream in another country. That's certainly an unbelievable experience. And we got to talk about this full circle moment here. One of the CanAm teams that you played with was the Brockton Rocks, who are of course now in the Futures League. Is it kind of weird seeing the Rocks playing in the Futures League and being like against them, I guess? And have you been back to Campanelli since?
Yeah, I've been to Campanelli a number of times because I live in Boston, so it's one of the closer parks. And I think there's a couple things that help that transition. I mean, the uniform colors and logo and things like that have changed. The team name is the same. The ballpark's the same. Similar to the Lake Monsters, right? They were a team that was in another league that lost, that doesn't have that affiliation anymore. And I think it's just tremendous that the Futures League has been able to keep baseball in a lot of these communities, communities that had professional teams. I mean, almost, is it 7 out of 8 franchises, right? Is it 7 out of 8? Yeah, 7 out of 8 franchises, play, in a stadium, sometimes with the same name, again, but in a stadium that hosted a professional team fairly recently and has been able to keep high quality baseball, affordable family nights out in these communities. And so I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and of course, from the CanAm League to summer ball, you actually have playing experience in summer ball, playing for the Cape League and NECBL pre-Futures League era. Of course, I'm sure you would have chosen the Futures League if you had your choice. But now that you work in summer ball, working for the Lake Monsters in the front office, what is the biggest difference from then to now, and how important was summer ball to your playing career and to your life?
I mean, it's really important. I mean, this is a time players can, get a lot more at bats. You can get used to playing with the wood bat. And if you have professional aspirations, or even if not, this is the nearest approximation to that, right? You're playing night in, night out, again, with the wood bat. It's, from a player development perspective, it almost can't be beat. I mean, you can be out on the field early. I know, some guys are taking summer classes and have academic obligations, but a lot of players don't. So you can really focus on baseball. Some players have jobs, some players don't. So there's some variability there, but it's tremendous. And you get to meet, players from all over the country and other programs, and you learn, how different things are done. And I know, whole other conversation now about the, NCAA transfer portal and things like that, and people moving around between programs probably more than they ever have in the past. But right, it used to be you only really had tremendous insight on one program, on your program. But, you can always learn how things are done differently. I had a college teammate who went on to, pitch in the major leagues for several years and then pitch in Japan for a while, had a very successful career, who, learned a different grip on his changeup in summer ball, just messing around in the bullpen, had a guy talk to him, and that made, helped him probably take a step to the point where he ended up becoming a big leaguer, at least partially because of something he learned over the summer. I mean, obviously a lot of other things go into that, but summer ball, has those types of opportunities. And, I think I'll always look back very grateful for my own summer ball opportunities, but it would be remiss not to say that that I'm envious of everybody who's playing now in the Futures League and who can play a full season and stay healthy. Because that didn't happen for me. I had a really unfortunate thing happen where I got hit in the face and broke my eye socket and my nose and had multiple blood transfusions. And a summer that I thought was going to be a big summer for me, and that I hoped was going to lead to the draft didn't work out. And that's been a tremendous life lesson for me. I hope that never happens to anybody else. I would never wish that on anyone, but it does sort of force you to examine the concept of resilience and how you, how you work yourself back from something like that. And I remember, because there have been some uncertainties around some of the surgeries and different things. When I got back on the field, I finished this is 2005 season with Wareham for the last week, on the field. And I'd been in and out of the hospital for a month. And, I don't know if I'd ever enjoyed baseball more than I did that first week back. And it was not my best performing weekend, right? I mean, you hadn't seen, that type of velocity, obviously sitting in a hospital. You hadn't been doing a lot of the things, and that league was going to be a league that was going to challenge my ability to begin with. And, but I was really grateful for that. And my last week playing professionally was also, I'd left after the 2009 season and started working in humanitarian response, and been working on, the tremendous tragedy that was the earthquake in Haiti in 2010. And I was asked by Quebec, who I'd played for previously, to come back and play for them for a week, even though I hadn't, been working out and playing in the same way that I had. And, professionally, I think you're always worried a little bit about being released, especially if you are like me, like a marginal player, you're not a superstar. And that's always kind of in the back of your mind. If you go 0 for 4, maybe I'll be released the next day. And that's not a particularly fun way to play, just worried with that hanging over your head. But that last week, they called me back to play for a week because of one of the players from Venezuela was going home for the birth of his first child. And they asked me to come back, and I played for a week. Again, statistically brutal, but I wasn't worried about being released. I knew I had a week. It was a week that I wouldn't have otherwise had. And it felt like such a gift to wrap things up that way. And sort of, that was the end of my, playing career. And that felt like, it was nice. I didn't ultimately have the professional career that I wanted. I think I have to look at where there were really real high points. And I will say both those summer ball experiences, again, led to some good friendships, some good experiences. But ultimately there were some injuries that, are just something that happens and kind of unfortunate, but it's given me a lot of learning since then.
Yeah. And obviously, I mean, that's tough, especially the way you got injured. That's crazy. And you came back too. That's something. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. It was really unfortunate. It's unlucky. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just,
I mean, yeah, you can't sum it up.
I mean, I love baseball. I mean, I think when I was in the hospital, I think getting out, there was never a question of whether I was going to go back and play again. I think I probably flinched on a couple, pitches up and in. and but yeah, but baseball, I mean, you're a baseball guy. I mean, baseball is great. It's going to take more than that to get me to not do baseball stuff.
Yeah, you're always going to find your way back to the sport you love. There's
Yeah.
no doubt about that. And you touched on it a couple times during this episode, and I definitely want to ask about it before we sign off here. Stepping away from baseball, through my reading, through your talking, you've done a lot of humanitarian work, as you talked about. You talked about working for Haiti during the earthquake, and you talked about going to Ethiopia in response to the drought in the Horn of Africa. What does it mean to you to be able to do that and to continue to be able to do that for people, especially considering, a lot of it you were doing while coaching and playing baseball?
Yeah. I mean, I feel very fortunate to have been able to do it. I think there's a lot of people that would like to do things like that, and they're just not in a position to be able to do it. So I was fortunate to be able to do it. I think I always, grew up seeing things that were happening in the world and wishing that there was a role that I could have in making, trying to make things a little bit better. I think when you're younger, you probably think that you alone have maybe more power to change things than you do. But there's also, a lot of value in incrementalism, right? It's better to have one more person involved in trying to do the right thing than one less. So, if you have the capacity to help out and do something, I think you do that to the best of your ability. Certainly baseball taught me a lot of things about persistence and, hard work and getting along with teammates. I think baseball is a great teacher of lessons, and I applied those even when, I was, miles and miles and miles realistically and metaphorically away from baseball. Those lessons of baseball are something that I think, follows you around wherever you go. On the doing both, I've always, really admired Roberto Clemente and Jackie Robinson and things that, baseball players have been able to do beyond baseball. And, I need to underline this with the strongest possible pen here. I am not, those two men, but I think we can, aspire to learn from, the tremendous examples of people that have used, either their platform or have not been limited by the fact they're doing something else to do something else good. So, those guys are in a different stratosphere. But I remember, certainly hearing stories, of Clemente growing up and just, thinking that was somebody that I wanted to try to emulate even a little bit. And then, I think we all just try to find a place in the world that we can, contribute and make a difference, and mix doing the work that needs to be done with work that's quite a bit of fun. And so I, again, very appreciative, that the Lake Monsters let me sort of do this, part-time on the side. And then I've got, my other job that, I'm very committed to working internationally, on issues related to resilience and climate change and a lot of the things that I think are really fundamental. So I feel very privileged to be able to try to do a little bit of both.
Yeah. And obviously it's been great to see, of course, Clemente and Robinson did it, and see guys still doing it, using their platform in not only baseball, but in all sports, trying to, improve issues in our country and other countries. And it's great to see you continuing to do that today while working for the Lake Monsters and Harvard and whatever else. You're a busy man.
Yeah. Sorry on the scheduling front. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And bringing it all back for one final question. You've lived and breathed baseball pretty much your entire life. You've been involved in summer ball for a good amount of that. In general, what is your favorite part about baseball, about summer ball, and whether it's, currently in your role with Lake Monsters or when you played at Harvard or the CanAm League or whatever?
I think everything. That's a bad answer. I'll tell you. So I wrote an essay once about the feeling, and you probably relate to this, being a New Englander, the first time I could put my spikes on in the spring when the ground wasn't frozen and your spikes, sort of bite into the ground, that's a great feeling. You get to do that every day in summer ball, which is great. The sound of a wood bat is just the way baseball is supposed to be played. And you get to do that. You have a bad day, you get to be back on the field the next day. You get to, spend a summer with hopefully, 30 or 40 people that you're going to be friends with for a long time. And you don't get to do that, later in your life. You get to learn from really caring coaches and people around the organization who really care about you as an individual and want to see you improve. And that's a tremendous opportunity. So I know you asked for my one favorite thing about summer baseball, but I think it's all of it. It's really great. I'm, grateful the Futures League exists. I'm grateful the other summer leagues exist. I'm grateful, for all the players that we have and for the people, that are involved in the organization, for yourself and people in the commissioner's office that, do a lot to enable this environment for the players. And again, for, highlight Frida up in Vermont, who spends a huge amount of her time arranging for good host family situations and those host families and the players that stay connected. I mean, what an awesome thing. So I think it's all great.
Yeah, it's great to have been working in summer ball for the past 4 years, and there's so many cogs in the machine on all the teams, leagues, everything. So it's been great to see. And we're going to call that our Zephyr question of the day. It's presented by Zephyr, the official on-field hat of the Futures League. Zephyr, high quality and innovative design since 1993. Morgan, want to thank you so much again for joining us today. This was great. We appreciate the time. Good luck with everything, with all the jobs and stuff. We look forward to seeing you in Vermont and around the Futures League for the rest of the summer here.
Thanks, Owen. Take care.
Alrighty. And this has been episode 7 of season 5 of Back to the Futures, the official podcast of the Futures League. We have new episodes coming out every Monday. Be sure to subscribe to our podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and YouTube. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see everybody soon.